Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, December 7th, 2018. And as a matter of fact, it's Pearl Harbor Day. I don't know if the president realizes that yet. I'm sure somebody's going to poke him eventually and prepare a tweet for him, but he's on a mini tirade at the moment, and so he's not letting anybody into the residence to remind him of that. May not be fully aware of what Pearl Harbor Day is. I don't know. Let me think now. In 1941, so is this the 77th anniversary? On December 7th. It's the 77th. I think a lot of sevens, so go out and play the lottery today. That's the numerology report for the morning. He's on a tear about something, Mueller related. I understand there's a lot of things happening today. There's some more court paperwork to be filed. Rudy Giuliani has written 87 pages in response, apparently, to, I don't know whether this is supposed to be, I guess the 87 pages is supposed to be part of Giuliani's ongoing preparation for a response to the ultimate Mueller report. I don't think that's what's coming today. I think there's just some more memos being filed with the courts. I admit I haven't kept up with it as much as I should because I'm just waiting for the whole thing to come crashing down already. I don't want to bother you with the details of what's going on. Anyway, he's furious about something. Here's the 87 pages tweet. It's been incorrectly reported that Rudy Giuliani and others will not be doing a counter to the Mueller report. That is fake news. Already 87 pages done, but obviously cannot complete until we see the final witch hunt report, of course. Garbage, of course. I doubt very much whether there's anything that's been written at this point, or, probably Giuliani saying, I'm working on it. And that's the Trump style of keeping up on his work. Well, how many pages have you written? 87. So who knows? I don't know. Anyway, other news this morning, the rumors are swirling that John Kelly is expected to be out at the White House sometime soon, resigned / fired. Don't know whether there's any real reason to believe that that's the case. This is probably the third or fourth time that it's been reported that people were expecting that. And today's rumor is being hung up on the report that Kelly, who is usually an early arrival at the White House, and geez, you would think so. I mean, chief of staff at the White House. I think you have to get up early in the morning, even for this president. Somebody's got to do the jobs that he's supposed to be doing. And he's not there, or there's an early meeting and he's not in it. So it's a maybe. Who knows? Who cares? What's the difference? The chief of staff doesn't make any difference in this place anyhow. So we'll wait and see. Like I said, a Twitter tirade. Most people are already talking about it. I don't think we're going to bother reading through it. He's going on about how everything's fake, et cetera, et cetera. Last night he had a tantrum and tweeted the crazy, and then this morning he woke up and did more of the same. Last night he was on about something. I guess he was once again not watching CNN. Got mad about who even cares. I don't know what they were reporting. It doesn't matter. And he screamed out, fake news. CNN is fake news. And along about the same time that he tweeted that out, somebody called in a bomb threat to CNN and disrupted their live programming. And they apparently had to evacuate their building in New York. So totally normal. You know how it goes. That's the story of our lives. Daily Kos Radio, though, is live right now. Bill has told us all the way from Portland, Maine, so we know it's true. It's Mueller time. Trump is panic tweeting, and Kagro X, that's me. Hi, everybody. Bids you only the TGIFiest of TGIFs. I like that. Very good. TGIF yourself, everybody, with the Kagro in the Morning Show's Friday programming. What do we have in store for you? Oh, I don't know. There's all sorts of things that I've stowed away, all sorts of things I've been tweeting about. I will attempt to sort it all out for you and figure out what's hot, what's not, what's got to be read, what do you need to know before the weekend. And it's all a crapshoot. And it's all crap as well. So I say get out there and shoot as much crap as possible. We could begin with the NRA stories. That's crap and shooting. And we might very well want to check in on that. Let's see. I have at least one, two, maybe a third report on stuff going on at the NRA. Let's see. How much further back do I go before I give up on finding the third one? All right, that's the answer. That's the end of it. Let's see. Greg sent along a report from Mother Jones on the subject, and is this the one that had... I had one that had a big, splashy page, outlining what was going on. So it might be this one here from The Trace. Let's begin with the Mother Jones work on it because, I don't know, everybody loves Mother Jones, I guess. So we'll go with it. Oh, I can't start with that one. I have to deal with their fundraising splash page first. And I mention that to you because, hey, I don't know, maybe you want to go and donate some money to them. They're a good outfit. There are lots of them out there. Maybe you've already maxed out to our federal campaign. You can't. We're not running for office, and I haven't seen anybody do that just yet. But I remind you, we run on donations too. But okay, so does Mother Jones. Besides, the truth is, we rely on all these people for their reporting, for content to read and discuss on the air here. And I can't take all the money. And so give some out to other folks. And hey, don't forget Netroots Nation out there too. Netroots Nation. Well, you could donate to Netroots Nation. Netroots Radio, the folks who actually wake up and carry you this signal. Maybe, you could kick them a couple of bucks too, and you'll find them at netrootsradio.com, and easy enough to do. And everybody should share in this. Plus, I should hire interns at $15 an hour. Which reminds me, another good reason to donate, Scott Anderson. I can't pay $15 an hour. I don't think he's spending that much time on the show, but I wonder about that. How close am I getting to $15? I hope he's only spending an hour. That way it would be easier to get closer to $15. But here's the situation. He's out there hustling on a seasonal job and taking in some extra dough, more than I'm able to pay him. The temptation of pulling in a little extra during the holiday season, well, can't blame them for that. I don't think I'm paying them anything close to what they're paying. So I'm on my own doing my own summaries these days. There's no chance. I mean, I don't know how much you got to pay to lure somebody away from, like holiday season delivery type money. It's big. Well, it's not huge bucks or anything, but it makes a big difference. I'm not saying we have to park them in place, but it would be nice if we could throw them a couple extra bucks, don't you think? Plus, of course, yada, yada, rough to run the place, etc. It's really true. All right. Well, anyway, thank you to everybody who puts hours in on the show, including me. Thank me. You're welcome. I'm welcome. And we'll move on to the story. From Mother Jones, who also wants your money. Documents point to illegal campaign coordination between Trump and the NRA. And they want your money, too. Just don't give it to them. Any money you were planning on giving to, you should take whatever you were planning on giving to Trump, double it, and send it to me immediately. I'm sure you can do that. Mike Spies, it's spelled like spies, but I'm guessing that it's pronounced Spies. He's the writer behind this piece. Trump and the gun group used the same consultants to spearhead TV ad blitzes at the height of the 2016 election, likely in violation of federal law. And we might as well start out with a new likely violation of federal law to start things out. And, hey, Scott. All right, he's listening. He's getting ready for work. He's putting on a Santa suit and getting ready to get out there. We miss you, Scott. It's a long day when you're doing your own summaries of your own show. One thing I got to tell you, insider secret, if you do the show and then you go to summarize it, it really hits you how boring the whole thing is. Like, not only did I already hear this show, I said it. And one, I don't remember it very well. And two, you know how people don't like listening to their own voice, their own recorded voice? Imagine doing that for 2 hours. It's not easy. Okay, so let's see. Oh, The Trace also has the same story. Are they reporting the Mother Jones story? They have the big splashy page on it. Let's see. I'm just going to take a look and see whether they're reporting somebody else's reporting, or am I going to find out something new from the trace? This is a long piece for the trace. All right. But let's get to, we'll get to the new illegalities that we can pile up on top of whatever we're going to hear about from Mueller today. Although if there's any indication from last time, we won't hear about it until late at night. All right. The National Rifle Association spent $30 million, you know all about that, to help elect Donald Trump, more than any other independent conservative group. Most of that sum went towards television advertising, but a political message loses its power if it fails to reach the right audience at the right time. For the complex and consequential task of placing ads in key markets across the nation in 2016, the NRA turned to a media strategy firm called Red Eagle Media. Eagle, rawr. Red, also, rawr. One element of Red Eagle's work, sounds like it might be a Native American tribal chief, but it really isn't. It's just a jerky company's stupid name. One element of Red Eagle's work for the NRA involved purchasing a slate of 52 ad slots on WVEC. That's an ABC affiliate in Norfolk, Virginia, in late October 2016. The ads targeted adults aged 35 to 64. I mean, it's on television, whatever. And aired on local news programs and syndicated shows like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Oh boy. All right. So my wife's parents. In paperwork filed with the Federal Communications Commission, Red Eagle described them as anti-Hillary and pro-Trump. Okay. The Trump campaign pursued a strikingly similar advertising strategy. Shortly after the Red Eagle purchase as Election Day loomed, it bought 33 ads on the same station, set to air during the same week. The ads, which the campaign purchased through a firm called American Media and Advocacy Group, or AMAG, were aimed at precisely the same demographics as the NRA spots and often ran during the same shows, bombarding Norfolk viewers with complimentary messages. Yeah, the anti-coordination laws really don't work very well in the modern context, but okay. You can see how this is happening. The two purchases may have looked coincidental. Red Eagle and AMAG appear at first glance to be separate firms, but each is closely connected to a major conservative media consulting firm called National Media Research, Planning, and Placement. In fact, the three outfits are so intertwined that both the NRA's and the Trump campaign's ad buys were authorized by the same person, National Media's Chief Financial Officer John Farrell. This is very strong evidence, if not proof, of illegal coordination, said Larry Noble, a former general counsel for the Federal Election Commission. This is the heat of the general election, and the same person is acting as an agent for the NRA and the Trump campaign. I can already anticipate what that person has to say about I was making my best purchasing decisions on behalf of two separate clients. I didn't intentionally coordinate them. I just happened to believe this was the demographic we needed, and two people with the same aims came to me, and of course I recommended the same demographic and targeting to them. And that'll probably work in court, too. It's just, that's why, these anti-coordination laws that we have are foolish and unenforceable. I don't think we should be necessarily getting rid of them, but, and I don't know how much more you can clamp down. You could add penalties. You could make it easier to prove coordination, legally speaking, but, all right. Well, anyway, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it every time. Reporting by the Trace. Oh, wow. So that's interesting. Oh, well, there's the answer. Reporting by the Trace, which has teamed up with Mother Jones. There's your answer. Now, do I have to read them both? Did they share all the information? Does one have the good nuggets on one part of the story? And the Trace and Mother Jones together teamed up to investigate the NRA's political activity. That's good news. Shows that the NRA and the Trump campaign employed the same operation, at times the exact same people, to craft and execute their advertising strategies for the 2016 presidential election. The investigation, which involved a review of more than 1,000 pages of Federal Communications Commission's and Federal Election Commission documents, found multiple instances in which national media, through its affiliates, Red Eagle and AMAG, executed ad buys for Trump and the NRA that seemed coordinated to enhance each other. And I'm sure they did. Red Eagle and AMAG obviously exist to farm out the work of national media so that they can do things that look on paper like they didn't coordinate because they're from separate entities. That's basically the upshot of what we're going to learn, I think. Individuals working for national media or its affiliated companies either signed or were named in FCC documents demonstrating that they had knowledge of both the NRA and Trump campaign's advertising plans. Experts say the arrangement appears to violate campaign finance laws. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where illegal coordination seems more obvious, said Anne Ravel, I don't know how she pronounces it, a former chair of the FEC, who reviewed the records. It is so blatant that it doesn't even seem sloppy. Everyone involved probably just thinks there aren't going to be any consequences, and there might not have been. It's not an easy thing to find out. I mean, well, it is an easy thing to find out. It's just time-consuming, and you have to know there's a reasonable chance you're going to come up with something. You could just dip your toe in the water, probably with almost anything Trump does, and find a conflict somewhere. But not a lot of people pouring through the records of both the FEC and the FCC. But when there's $30 million in the pool, I guess it makes sense that you might find something in the end. National media, the NRA, the Trump campaign, and the White House did not respond to multiple requests for comment. AMAG does not appear to have any employees or contacts independent of national media. A lawyer who has been identified in news accounts as representing AMAG did not respond to multiple requests for comment. The website for national media, which is based in Alexandria, Virginia, describes it as a, quote, a nationally recognized leader in media research, planning, and placement for issue advocacy, corporate, and political campaigns, and says that its goal is to maximize every dollar that our clients spend on their media. I'm sure that is. Those clients have included the Republican National Committee, as well as the GOP's congressional and senatorial campaign committees. Publicly available corporate documents do not indicate who runs or owns AMAG, but a lawyer representing the company, that's interesting, acknowledged to the Daily Beast in 2016 that it was affiliated with national media. PBS has described AMAG as an offshoot of national media. The Trump campaign paid AMAG more than $74 million. No one knows who works there, but they got paid $74 million for placed media in September and October of 2016. Red Eagle Media, the firm that the NRA used to place its pro-Trump ads, is merely an assumed or fictitious name used by national media, according to corporate records. Interesting. They didn't even bother to incorporate anything. They just DBA'd it. Corporate FEC and FCC records for all three entities list the addresses of 815 Slater's Lane or 817 Slater's Lane, a pair of adjacent brick buildings that share a parking lot in the historic Old Town section of Alexandria. So the same office. The NRA was free to spend as much money as it wanted on behalf of Trump in 2016, but under federal law, if an independent group and a campaign share election-related information, then the group's expenditures no longer qualify as independent and are instead treated as in-kind donations, subject to a $5,000 limit. When an outside group and a candidate use the same vendor, staffers working for either client are, normally, prevented by law from sharing information with each other. Typically, such vendors make staffers sign a company firewall policy, which functions as a pledge not to coordinate and an acknowledgement that there are civil and criminal penalties for doing so. Under the law, national media staffers working for Trump should have been siloed from those working for the NRA. Documents suggest instead a synchronized effort. I guess the same people. It's hard to firewall yourself. Records in the FCC public inspection files that television stations maintain in order to comply with transparency regulations around political advertising, show that Red Eagle and AMAG often bought ads around the same time on the same stations for the NRA and the Trump campaign, respectively. During the last week of October, for instance, Red Eagle bought $36,250 worth of ads on the ABC affiliate in Cleveland on behalf of the NRA. A form the NRA filed with the station described spots mentioning the Second Amendment, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and the 2016 presidential election. At the same time, AMAG spent almost the exact same amount, $36,150, on a series of Trump campaign ads on the same Cleveland station during the same week. Both the NRA ads and the Trump ads aired during many of the same programs, including local newscasts, Good Morning America, and the NC and the college football that morning. Let's see. We identified at least 4 current or former national media employees, including CFO John Farrell, who are named in FCC filings as representatives of both the Trump campaign and the NRA during the final stretch of the election. The form filed with the Cleveland station on behalf of the NRA by Red Eagle in September of 2016 lists a person named Christy Kovach as their point of contact. An identical form that Red Eagle filed for the NRA with WCPO in Cincinnati also lists Kovach. Kovach is the senior buyer for national media, specializing in television media buying for political candidates, issue and advocacy groups, and public affairs clients. According to her bio on the company's website, she's been with the firm for 20 years. Throughout the fall of 2016, Kovach was involved in ad purchases for Trump. Just 3 days before, she was named in records as the contact for Red Eagle in Cleveland and Cincinnati. She appeared in the same role on an AMAG advertising request sheet filed for the Trump campaign with an NBC Telemundo station in Miami. FCC documents also list her as the AMAG buyer for or contact for various other Florida stations. So she's working for Red Eagle and AMAG. How nice. Another national media employee, Ben Angle, was identified in the 2018 book Inside Campaigns, Elections Through the Eyes of Political Professionals as an architect of Trump's airwave strategy. In mid-September, the book says, Angle and his boss were summoned to Trump Tower and told their firms would be placing all of the Trump campaign's television advertising during the last 7 weeks of the campaign. Angle is listed on National Media's website as a senior media buyer. In October, his name appeared in FCC paperwork as the contact for an NRA ad buy placed through Red Eagle at an ABC station in Denver. A fourth staffer, whose name appears on both NRA and Trump campaign documents, Caroline Kowalski, left National Media in 2017. Her title was Media Specialist, according to her LinkedIn page. Within the span of 1 week, in late October and early November 2016, she was listed as the Red Eagle contact for an NRA ad purchase in Cape Coral, Florida, and as the AMAG contact for a Trump campaign placement at a CBS station in Philadelphia. Farrell's signature appeared on forms authorizing ads on stations across the country. For the Trump campaign, that included battleground markets such as Youngstown, Ohio, Cape Coral, Florida, and Reno, Nevada. For the NRA, it included Cincinnati and Wilmington, North Carolina. Farrell also signed off on placements with national syndicators and distributors covering most of the country for both Trump and the NRA. Farrell, Kovach, Angle, and Kowalski did not respond to requests for comment. According to their national media bios or LinkedIn pages, all are specialists in the art of strategic media placement. Farrell's efforts to help national media provide optimal financial stewardship of campaign media budgets. Kovach has consistently bought the largest media markets around the country, building an extensive knowledge of ratings, costs, and seasonal trends across all time periods and day parts. Wow, that's some lingo. I guess this paragraph we should just toss in terms of the true importance of the story to us. This is their descriptions basically in their resumes of what they did in their jobs. They all said they were awesome and whatever. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. The problem is that they were awesome for too many companies at one time. Prior reporting, too many companies that were working together on the same campaign and shouldn't have been. Prior reporting has identified consulting firms as conduits for potentially illegal coordination between campaigns and outside groups. In 2013, a Center for Public Integrity and NBC News investigation turned up evidence that an AMAG media buyer purchased airtime for both a Texas congressional candidate and for an outside group that was supporting him. So it's a habit over there. In July, we found that the NRA had been using an apparent shell firm called Starboard Strategic Incorporated to produce ads for Senate candidates who employed a GOP consulting outfit called On Message Incorporated. The two entities, Starboard Strategic and On Message, according to subsequent complaints filed to the FEC, are functionally indistinguishable. Starboard and On Message are located in the same Alexandria buildings as national media, according to public records. So they just make up new company names every cycle, I guess. The FEC has the authority to launch investigations and seek civil penalties, but it's unlikely that the NRA or the Trump campaign will face any official action. The FEC's 4 commissioners, it's supposed to have 6, have been deadlocked for years in an ideological split, making a unanimous vote required for significant investigations almost impossible to achieve. The Department of Justice is also authorized to launch investigations, but prosecutions under the Federal Election Campaign Act are uncommon. If convicted, violators can be subject to criminal fines and up to 5 years in prison. Experts say the apparent coordination is the most glaring they've ever seen. It's impossible for these consultants to have established firewalls in their brains. Brendan Fisher, the director of the Federal Reform Program at the Campaign Legal Center, said, "We have not previously seen this level of evidence undermining any claim of a firewall." Effectively placing ads is among the most important tasks in getting a candidate elected to office. The creative content is only part of the equation, said Rick Wilson, a Republican media strategist. Political advertising relies on smart media placement at every stage. Anything else, and you might as well just throw your money in a bonfire. And if you're Trump, you probably frequently do. Campaign coordination, Wilson added, allows candidates and outside groups to maximize their resources, making spending far more efficient. Modern campaigns are driven by data, he said. Pollsters and analytics people will get you a set of targets, and you want to address those targets as best you can in as many markets as you can. Concurrent purchases by Red Eagle and AMAG appear to have been designed to provide such a higher return on spending. And that was the idea, and that's the way that they didn't even really bother to try to circumvent coordination laws. They just said, you can't prosecute us for it because you're deadlocked at the FEC. We know that. Let's just go at it nakedly and see what happens. And they did. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I would say time now for us to move on to some other Trump campaign violations and Trump White House violations of federal law, the Constitution, etc. Long story short, really, we found out from the Trace and Mother Jones is that, by hiring the same media consulting group to do all their targeting and ad placement, the NRA and the Trump campaign were able to effectively double their money by coordinating. That's the reason it's illegal to coordinate. And they just went ahead and did it and figured, well, if we just put different company names on all of the purchase orders, most people aren't going to bother reading the name of the contact at the company who is responsible for these things, or look at the addresses. One's Red Eagle, one's National Media, one's AMAG. Cursory reading is not going to give anybody the tip off here. Why they don't just go ahead and just fake it and give fake addresses that are elsewhere, I have no idea. I mean, if you're going to do it criminally, you might as well go all the way. I expect to see that by 2020's campaign, I suppose. All right. Other shenanigans, which we'll have to call here. Let's see. Which of the 2 or 3 that are out there are the most important? One I didn't get to yesterday, but hinted at. We'll just start off with that one. David Fahrenthold is out there and at it again. This time along with Jonathan O'Connell, reporting at the Washington Post the other day, December 5th, that would be Wednesday, on the Saudi-funded lobbyist who paid, or which, it's the lobbying outfit. It's an entire lobbying corporate, Corvus Communications. You've probably heard their name called before in the past. I mean, it's a large-scale communication shop that does everything from, regular straight product advertising to PR campaigns to lobbying. It's pretty big, and so there's going to be some shenanigans going on. Anyway, Corvus, I guess, doing some lobbying on behalf of the Saudish, and here's how they decided to do it. Saudi-funded lobbyists paid for 500 rooms at Trump's hotel after the 2016 election, and it's pretty transparent when you really take a look at it, too. Once you figure out, all the connections, you realize exactly what's going on. Here's the story. Lobbyists representing the Saudi government reserved blocks of rooms at President Trump's Washington, D.C. hotel within a month of Trump's election in 2016, paying for an estimated 500 nights at the luxury hotel in just 3 months, according to organizers of the trips and documents obtained by the Washington Post. The most naked way you could do this is, of course, just say, look, the Saudi government will book 500 rooms at the hotel, and just who cares whether anybody stays in them or not, they're legendary for spending money that way. The old anecdotes from the 70s and 80s about oil sheiks buying Cadillacs, driving them until the gas tank was empty, and then abandoning them and getting another one. Well, I don't know whether any of that is really true, and it's probably an awful racial stereotype, although I don't know that it's necessarily a racial characteristic. It has nothing to do with that. It simply has to do with the oil money. There's plenty of Arabs who don't have oil money. So there. That gets off the hook there. Let's just get out of this dead end here. But the Saudis are famous for spending their money lavishly. That's because the only people we really know of as Saudis are members of the Saud family. There are other people living there, but some of whom actually have made a pretty penny off of their connections to the regime and the various kings that they've had and the thousands of princes they have running around, and the rest of whom are essentially nameless schlubs, I guess. Plus, of course, imported foreign workers who build the place and work the place while the princes run around and spend their money. So anyway, no big deal for them to just say, I don't care that nobody's staying in the hotel rooms. The point is to use the money as a bribe. If you have people who want to stay in the hotel rooms, have at it, I guess. So here they decided to double up by saying, we can put these rooms to use and get some additional benefit out of them. And I don't mean by letting princes just hang out there. Corvus, I don't know whether they came up with this idea, but it's at least it's an efficient use of resources that you're going to be burning anyway. Here's what happened. At the time, these lobbyists were reserving large numbers of D.C. area hotel rooms as part of an unorthodox campaign that offered U.S. military veterans a free trip to Washington, then sent them to Capitol Hill to lobby against a law the Saudis opposed, according to veterans and organizers. So it's a little bit like one of those timeshare condo things where they're like, come up and enjoy a free vacation day in the Poconos on us, or you win a prize, come claim your fabulous free prize, no obligation. All you have to do is when you get there, they say, we're giving a little sales pitch on our timeshares, and just sit through our little pitch, and if you're interested afterwards, we'll sign you up. Otherwise, you get to claim your prize and go away. So free trip to Washington. Washington, hooray, I can't wait to go to Washington for free. How fantastic. Hey, all you got to do is, while you're here, you probably want to visit your member of Congress anyway, right? So we'll arrange a free trip to Capitol Hill for you. You'll meet your congressman. It's a big honor. While you're there, there's this terrible thing that's happening, and you can help prevent it. Just talk to your congressman. You want something to talk about when you get there, right? And they give you talking points. And they don't bother to tell you, oh, by the way, the reason you oppose this, we're asking you to oppose this law is our clients, Saudi Arabia, opposes this law. We're just going to use U.S. veterans to do the lobbying because they might not listen. We might want to keep a low profile for Saudi princes at the moment. They hadn't murdered Khashoggi yet, but they were thinking about it. And it's better if U.S. American military veterans from U.S. America are the ones doing the lobbying on this. So here's what they did. Like we said, at first they were putting up these veterans with the free trip to Washington in Northern Virginia hotels, which are, relatively speaking, cheaper than inside D.C. Then, in December of 2016, they switched most of their business to the Trump International Hotel in downtown Washington. In all, the lobbyists spent more than $270,000 to house 6 groups of visiting veterans at the Trump Hotel, which Trump still owns because of emoluments. These bookings have fueled a pair of federal lawsuits alleging Trump violated the Constitution by taking improper payments from foreign governments. I guess they thought they were trying to hide it. These aren't foreign governments staying at the Trump Hotel. They're U.S. American veterans. I love the U.S. America thing. But in reality, of course, they were there on free trips. They were being paid for by Corvus Communications. Who was paying Corvus for it? Saudi Arabia. Oops, how did we figure all this out? Again, disclosure laws. Why people just don't lie on that stuff, I have no idea. But keep telling the truth. It's great. Those bookings, as we said, have fueled a pair of federal lawsuits alleging an emoluments violation. During the period that they ran this scheme, records show the average nightly rate at the hotel was $768. I'm guessing that's, the rate on the sheet, but you get a lot. You stay there for a lot less. I think most hotel rooms have some kind of outrageous number out there that they have to declare under state or local laws, but they don't actually charge that much. The lobbyists who ran the trip say they chose Trump's hotel strictly because it offered a discount from that rate and had rooms available, not to curry favor with Trump. Everybody offers a discount from that rate. And by the way, if you're giving away free trips to veterans, you don't say, well, it's $768 a night, but I am getting a discount. You start out by saying, well, why don't we look for a hotel room that is priced in like a normal price range? And around here, that's, if you go out to Virginia, it's still $100 plus a night. But so why they think they need to put them up at the $700 a night hotel, I have no idea. And we're getting a discount. So that's why we did it. Not because Trump's name is on it or he gets to pocket the money. Absolutely not. It had nothing to do with that. Not one bit, said Michael Gibson, a Maryland-based political operative who helped organize the trips. He's lying, in case you were wondering. Some of the veterans who stayed at Trump's hotel say they were kept in the dark about the Saudis' role in the trips. Now they wonder if they were used twice over, not just to deliver someone else's message to Congress, but also to deliver business to the Trump organization. Wonder no more, boys. You were. It made all the sense in the world when we found out the Saudis had paid for it, said Henry Garcia, a Navy veteran from San Antonio who went on 3 trips. You loved it. He said the organizers never said anything about Saudi Arabia when they invited him. He believed the trips were organized by other veterans, but that puzzled him because this group spent money like no veterans group he had ever worked with. There were private hotel rooms, open bars, free dinners. Then, Garcia said, one of the organizers who had been drinking minibar champagne mentioned a Saudi prince. I said, oh, we were just used to give Trump money, Garcia said. Well, you're a smart guy. You got it right on the nose there, Mr. Garcia. Good job. The Washington firm Corvus MSL Group, which has long represented the Saudi government in the United States, paid the organizers of the veterans fly-in trips, according to lobbying disclosure forms. The firm declined to comment. The Saudi embassy did not respond to questions for this report. Trump hotel executives, speaking on a condition of anonymity to discuss their clients, said they were unaware at the time that Saudi Arabia was ultimately footing the bill and declined to comment on the rates they offered to guests. The existence of the Saudi-funded stays at Trump's hotel was reported by several news outlets last year, but reviews of emails, agendas, and disclosure forms from the Saudis' lobbyists and interviews this fall with 24 veterans provide far more detail about the extent of the trips and the organizers' interaction with veterans than have previously been reported. The reporting showed a total of 6 trips, during which the groups grew larger after the initial visit and the stays increased over time. The Post estimated the Saudi government paid for more than 500 nights in Trump hotel rooms, based on planning documents and agendas given to the veterans and conversations with organizers. These transactions have become ammunition for plaintiffs in 2 lawsuits alleging that Trump violated the Constitution's Foreign Emoluments Clause by taking payments from foreign governments. On Tuesday, the attorneys general in Maryland and the district subpoenaed 13 Trump business entities and 18 competing businesses, largely in search of records of foreign spending at the hotel. And you can, you'll recall that our discussion of this the other day included the surmise, I guess, that you'll remember that Trump had said, oh, well, we're not going to have a foreign emoluments problem with the hotel because we're going to take all the profits, and right away, already he's hedging by saying profits, should be all the revenues, all the profits from foreign governments and donate those to the United States Treasury. But of course, here we have hotel rooms being paid for by Corvus, an American company, on behalf of U.S. American veterans, by the way. So this isn't foreign emoluments money. We're keeping that. How did they get the money? Well, they were paid by Saudi Arabia. Well, this is like the old double taxation problem here. Look, Corvus has clients, sure. But the fact that one of them is Saudi Arabia doesn't mean that all money that Corvus spends at the Trump hotels is subject to scrutiny as foreign emoluments. Only money is fungible, and so therefore, yes, it is. It does mean that exactly. How terrible. Maybe Corvus is just going to have to either drop Saudi Arabia as a client or stop spending money at Trump properties. But neither of those things will happen. Instead, we're just going to have to sit here and be quietly outraged about it. Earlier this year, the Trump Organization donated about $151,000 to the U.S. Treasury, saying that it was the amount of profit from foreign governments, without explaining how it arrived at that number. It arrived by pulling it out of their butts, I guess. But the Justice Department, defending Trump in the lawsuits, says the Constitution doesn't bar routine business transactions, not that this was one. Next year, the transactions will also face scrutiny from the House's new Democratic majority. Democrats have said they want to understand Trump's business connections with the Saudi government in the aftermath of the killing of Post-contributing columnist Jamal Khashoggi at a Saudi consulate in Turkey. Foreign countries understand that they can curry favor with the president by patronizing his businesses, said Representative Adam Schiff of California, who will lead the House Intelligence Committee next year. It presents a real problem in that it may work. The White House declined to comment. It's the only thing in the White House that works. When these trips began in late 2016, the Saudi government was on a losing streak in Washington. In late September, Congress had overridden a veto from President Barack Obama and passed a law the Saudis vehemently opposed, the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, called JASTA. We know about that one. Adam Bonin knows about that one. The new law, backed by families of September 11th victims, opened the door to costly litigation, alleging that the Saudi government bore some of blame. The 19 hijackers involved in the attacks, 15 were Saudi citizens. In response, the Saudis tried something new. To battle one of America's most revered groups, the September 11th families, not that that has stopped people like Ann Coulter or Rush Limbaugh from crapping on them, they recruited allies from another. They went looking for veterans. So that's how they got used. Welcome home, brother, wrote Jason E. Johns, an Army veteran and Wisconsin lobbyist, to several veterans in December of 2016, according to identical emails two veterans shared with the Post. Johns invited the veterans, whom he did not know personally, on a trip to, quote, storm the Hill, to lobby against the law. Why? I wonder what the explanation for that was. Lodging at the Trump International Hotel, all expenses paid, Johns wrote in the email. Johns' email signature said he was with NMLB Veterans Advocacy Group, which is Johns' law firm in Madison, Wisconsin. According to filings with the Justice Department, Johns was actually making the overtures on behalf of the Saudi government. The Saudis' longtime lobbyist, Corvus, was paying Gibson, who was in turn paying Johns. The first trip Johns organized in mid-November 2016 was small and short. About 22 veterans staying 2 nights at the Westin in Crystal City, Virginia, on the other side of the Potomac River, separated from Capitol Hill by 4 miles and one big traffic jam. Gibson, who helped organize the trip, said another fly-in was held at the Westin later the same month. Then, on December 2nd, 2016, Gibson said he was told by Corvus to organize another visit on very short notice, with the attendees to arrive in just a few days. Gibson said the Westin was booked, so were many of the other hotels he tried. I just, out of the blue, decided, why not call the Trump Hotel? He's huge in the news, right? They're probably not busy. Why not call the Trump Hotel? I said I was representing a client, a group of veterans. Did they offer any discounts for veterans? And they said, yes, they did have availability. They also offered a lower rate, he said. So he's not a veteran, or maybe he is a veteran. Did Gibson do it? Is Gibson a veteran? Johns is, or says he is anyway. So that was it. There are going to be veterans staying there, so we want a lower rate. After that, I don't know if I buy into that. After the trip, Gibson said Corvus asked him to schedule more trips for 2017. It didn't tell him to go back to the Trump Hotel, but the first trip had gone so well that he did. In all, there were 5 more trips in January and February, according to documents and interviews. The number of attendees rose to 50 on one trip in late January, and the trips extended to 3 nights, according to agendas sent to veterans. So, let's see. There was also the client's call. That was also the client's call. Gibson said he never told any Trump Hotel staff that the Saudis were paying. I did this all on my corporate credit card for my client, who was Corvus, and said I was bringing a group of veterans to work on legislation. Veterans who attended these trips said a few things surprised them. One was how good their group seemed to be at spending money. We've done hundreds of veterans events, and we've stayed in Holiday Inns and eaten Ritz crackers and lemonade. And we're staying at this hotel that costs $500 a night, said Dan Cord, a Marine veteran. I'd never seen anything like this. They were like, that's what's so cool. Drinks on us. Uh-oh, drinks from the Saudis. Well, don't tell the Wahhabists about that. Each trip included 1 and sometimes 2 dinners in a Trump Hotel banquet room. There was usually an open bar in the room, veterans said, and it was always supposed to end at a certain hour, but often, they said, Johns would theatrically declare an extension. He'd be like, you know what? Just put it on for another hour, said Scott Bartels, an Army veteran from Wisconsin who went on 3 trips. So you can see why people are going on multiple trips. Another surprise, veterans said, was how bad their group seemed to be at lobbying. Veterans said they were told that the new law might cause other countries to retaliate and might lead to U.S. veterans being prosecuted overseas for what their units had done in war. Oh, that's the excuse, okay? I could see how it might hook them, plus the free bar and stuff. They were given a few fact sheets, including one with small print at the bottom reading, "This is distributed by Corvus MSL Group on behalf of the Royal Embassy of Saudi Arabia." Again, why do they even bother? But they said they weren't given detailed briefings about how the law ought to be amended or policy briefings to leave behind for legislators to study. The timing also was odd. They returned 5 times in January and February, when the issue was largely dormant and Washington was distracted by a new president's inauguration. They were sent again and again for dead-end meetings with legislators who had made up their minds. The 4th time I saw Grassley's guy, he was like, hey, what else is going on? We didn't even talk about the bill. Said Robert I don't know how you pronounce this. Susakul, maybe. I don't know. Suesakul. An Army veteran from Iowa, sorry guy, about his 4th visit to the office of Senator Charles Grassley. It had been clear after the first trip that Grassley wasn't interested in amending the bill. Didn't make sense hitting these guys a 4th time. Another problem. In some cases, congressional staffers confronted them because they knew who was funding these trips, even if the veterans did not. We'd walk in there and they'd go, are you the veterans that are getting bribed? Wow, that's what Susakul said. Susakul. I don't know how you would pronounce that. Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, in a phone interview, Johns said it was disappointing to hear veterans say that they were duped and that he had always made clear at the opening night's dinner that the Saudi government was paying. He said the veterans in attendance were all told that if they didn't like it, they could go home. I said, look, I'm a fellow vet, and I'm working with a PR firm here, and Saudi Arabia funded the trip, John said. But another organizer, Army veteran Dustin Tinsley, said he didn't remember Johns telling everyone anyway, about the Saudi involvement. He did say he felt veterans should have done their own research or asked. When I was asked directly, is Saudi Arabia paying for this, I would say yes. And out of all of them, not a single one of them said, I don't want to be a part of this, Tinsley said. Several veterans disputed Johns' account, saying they were not told of the source of the funding, or that the news had only slipped out later after repeating questioning or strong drink. One of the guys had a little too much to drink, said Gary Ard, a Navy veteran from Texas, describing an encounter with one of Johns' aides after the aide had been drinking at the Trump Hotel. He kind of raises up his hands and he says, "Thank you, Saudi Prince." Ard quit going after 2 trips. He said he felt guilty for having unwittingly gathered political intelligence for a foreign power. Ooh, that's a rough way of putting it. We're taking that heart-to-heart conversation with legislators, writing it down, and giving it to a group of people whom I don't know, Ard said. And my fear in that is we're going to create a pool of insight to what congressmen and what senators can be approached and what their mindsets are, and that's completely wrong. That's a rough look at it. He's right. The last trip to the Trump Hotel was in mid-February 2017, after the first news reports outed Johns as a Saudi contractor. Johns himself said he wasn't sure how much the trips had cost. The bills for the hotel rooms didn't go to him, and he never saw how much the rooms cost, so it wasn't on his corporate credit card after all, eh? In a filing with the Justice Department, required of U.S. firms working as agents for foreign powers, Corvus said it had spent $190,000 on lodging at the Trump Hotel and another $82,000 on catering and parking. The figure for lodging works out to be $360 per person per night, which is far below the Trump Hotel's average rate for the same period. In financial records accidentally released last year by the General Services Administration, which owns the building, the Trump Organization said it received an average nightly rate for January and February of $768.67. A price inflated by high demand around the inauguration. Since February 2017, Saudi customers have boosted the bottom line at 2 other Trump hotels. In Chicago, where everybody needs to go, the Trump Hotel's internal statistics show a sharp uptick in customers from Saudi Arabia after Trump took office. In New York this year, the general manager of Trump's hotel at Central Park said a single stay by some Saudi customers who were traveling with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was so lucrative, it helped the hotel turn a profit for the quarter. How do you like that? So, all the reports of Saudis funneling emoluments to him through the hotel turn out to be pretty much true, and they involve more than one hotel. That's another interesting tidbit for you to take home with you today. All right, let's see. By way of quick hits that we need to mention before our 1-minute break coming up at the top of the hour, and 2, the weekend. Just wanted to let you know, CNN reporting, according to, Zachary Cohen. This reported on Thursday, though hinted at, I think, the day before. Just a total shift on the storyline here, but important to know. New satellite image reveals activity at unidentified North Korean missile base. It appears they're not denuclearizing or getting rid of their weapons technology after all, even though Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un are in love, thanks to the new letters that they've been exchanging with one another. It's very sweet, but it's not helping with the missiles. New satellite images obtained exclusively by CNN. That's why I haven't heard about it elsewhere, I guess. And they should share those with the American military, I think. Reveal North Korea has significantly expanded a key long-range missile base located in the mountainous interior of the country, offering yet another reminder that diplomatic talks with the U.S. have done little to prevent Kim Jong-un from pursuing his promise to mass produce, and deploy the existing types of nuclear warheads in his arsenal. The satellite imagery offers evidence that the, oh my goodness, why did I even try this? Yangjiaodong, how do you like that? Yangjiaodong missile base and a nearby previously unreported site remain active and have been continuously upgraded, underscoring the reality of just how far apart Washington and Pyongyang are on the issue of denuclearization, despite 5 months of sporadic talks. That's a very gentle way of putting it. The president promised that they were denuclearizing the whole peninsula. And, well, doesn't matter. They're in love. While the base at Yongjiaodong has long been known to U.S. intelligence agencies and analysts, researchers at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, told CNN that the images reveal construction on a new facility just 7 miles away from the older site that had not previously been publicly identified. Satellite images show that the base remains active. Moreover, in the past year, North Korea has significantly expanded a nearby facility that appears to be another missile base, the Middlebury Institute report states, noting that it is unclear whether the two bases are separate or whether one is subordinate to the other. The images indicate that North Korea was building an extremely large underground facility in 2017 and that this facility was still under construction as of August 2018. Construction on the previously unidentified site has continued even after the Singapore summit between Kim and Trump in June. Jeffrey Lewis of the Middlebury Institute, one of the analysts that identified the site, told CNN, "Whatever Kim says about his desire for denuclearization, North Korea continues to produce and deploy nuclear-armed missiles. The site's unique location makes it a strong candidate to receive North Korea's newest long-range missiles, including those that carry nuclear weapons and can strike the United States," according to Lewis and his colleague David Schmeirer. Or Schmerler. I'm sorry, that might be an L and not an I. So, shall we just summarize by saying, once again, Dotard J. Trump appears to have been snookered by the North Koreans, and bad news. But he's not focused on that particular piece of bad news, of course, today. And at any rate, if people keep reporting it, he'll just say it's fake news. It is, after all, being carried by CNN. And so our national security and our national military strategies will just depend on dismissing intelligence out of hand if it gets out on CNN, because that's fake and I don't have to do anything about that. And that's probably enough for him. Our Commander-in-Chief, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back after this. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. We're on Netroots Radio. We're back. Let's see. There's a few more things I guess I ought to pull out of this CNN story about the new Korean missile bases. Let's throw this bit in here. Last month, Vice President Mike Pence, who is totally off the hook on everything, told NBC News that the U.S. will not require North Korea to provide a full list of its nuclear and missile sites before Trump meets again with Kim. How do you like that? We're being rough on those guys, aren't we? Washington and Pyongyang had been locked in a diplomatic standoff for weeks over which side would make concessions first. Analysts said that by relaxing its demands ahead of the second summit, the U.S. may have blinked first. That's so strong. We very strongly blinked. But we did it first. Record-breaking first blink. Pence spoke days after the release of an additional new commercial satellite image, identifying more than a dozen undeclared North Korean missile operating bases, another sign that Pyongyang is continuing to move forward with its ballistic missile program. And I guess more proof that presumably American, corporations know more than the military does, or at least they learn it first. Or maybe they're being contracted. I have no idea. But anyway, it's a bad idea all around. And, we look like crap on this one, but we look like crap on everything that we send Donald Trump out to do our negotiating for us. So no surprise there. All right. Let's move ahead with, a few other issues. Back to Trump and emoluments. This is a slightly different angle on Trump grifts. And I guess before I go into it, I'll mention that our friend Boo Radley here, not mad at me today, that's good news, has this to say about the Saudi story. Saudi funneling money to Trump Hotel is chump change compared to the real payoff for Trump and his grifter family for sticking with Mr. Bonesaw. Exile, when they all appear headed to prison on state charges. Doubt Putin will be so friendly after Trump has outlived his usefulness. Could be. You never know. But he's getting plenty of money from the Saudis and elsewhere. Plus, I guess, I think the real payoff people suppose is large chunks of financing for Jared Kushner and his real estate deals, and I guess probably also for the Trump, not nominally for the Trump kids in their handling of the Trump family and Trump organization real estate deals too. Plus, Donald Trump just likes being treated nicely there and getting medals and dancing around with a sword and being celebrated as a interesting and famous person. Anyway, I think that's probably all we need to know is he just likes, even if he's getting chump change, he's a chump. He just likes getting money. That's all that matters to him. Karen, wondering what's the math on the rate of the hotel rooms times the number of rooms times the number of days. I got many millions, but may have missed some of the numbers. Okay. I think we actually answered that, or we read an answer to it. Would it come down to $360 per night per veteran that they put up? Is that what you're asking? What's the math and the rate of hotel rooms? All right. So, it's still pretty healthy in terms of profits. $360 a night is still pretty substantial. All right. Let's see. And Michael Musson noting about the ad campaign coordination between the NRA and the Trump campaign. Sounds like a process crime, and I think you're right. Another one of those stupid process crimes. Okay, well, here's another one. This time reported in Forbes, how Donald Trump shifted $1.1 million of campaign donor money into his business. Doesn't have to all come from the Sauds. It can come from suckers right here in the United States. Dan Alexander reporting for Forbes on this one. On the day Donald Trump became president, and this is the day he truly became president, while inauguration festivities were still in full swing, all 12 people were having a good time, he officially launched his 2020 re-election campaign. That is unusual and also true. Donations poured in from more than 50,000 people across the country, but according to the latest federal filings, Trump has still not donated a penny of his own, while his businesses continued to charge the campaign for hotels, food, rent, and legal consulting. He has lawyers who have the nerve to charge for their legal consulting. Where are they? Anyway, that means the richest president in American history, maybe, has turned $1.1 million from donors across the country into revenue for himself. Ta-da! It wasn't always this way. From April of 2015 to June of 2016, Trump put $50 million of his own money, I would say, quote-unquote, own money, into his campaign while running a famously frugal operation. And I guess really the ultimate payoff in all of this Mueller investigation will be to point out to everyone, yeah, the $50 million of his quote-unquote own money, that was all, quote, actually Russian money, unquote, and we should be aware of that. When outsiders started paying the vast majority of his expenses in July of 2016, he loosened the purse strings a bit, funneling more money into his own companies and stemming his personal losses, which weren't losses, which is why he was willing to do them, because he was getting the money from Russia. Now that he is apparently not donating anything to the 2020 effort, Trump seems to be getting a small payback on his investment. Trump Tower Commercial LLC, an entity owned 100% by the president, has charged the re-election campaign $665,000 in rent, according to federal filings. The Republican National Committee also coordinated with the campaign to pay an additional $225,000 in rent. Campaign representatives did not respond to requests for comment, and an RNC official declined to answer questions about the payments, leaving it unclear exactly how much space they leased inside Trump Tower. Don't be surprised if the answer is zero, but we paid $225,000 for it. But anyway, it appears to be plenty. Leading up to the 2016 election, the president's campaign paid an average of $2,700 in monthly Trump Tower rent for every person listed in campaign filings as receiving a payroll payment. The 2020 operation, by contrast, is shelling out an average of $6,300 in monthly rent for every such person. Again, it's presumptive to say when they say it's unclear how much space they leased inside Trump Tower, but it appears to be plenty. It appears to be plenty. I guess that's fair enough to say. It just, like I said, it may still just be zero. They just are saying we're running this huge operation there. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. We may never know. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, they're handing over all this money for rent. $6,300 per person per month who they say is working there. Are they working there? I don't know. Nobody knows. Then there are the payments flowing into Trump Plaza LLC, a Trump-owned entity that has taken in $42,000 of campaign money since November of 2017. Although federal filings list the purpose of those payments as rent, it is difficult to tell what the campaign is actually renting. You see, Trump Plaza LLC controls a retail space, a garage, and 2 brownstones near 3rd Avenue in New York City. The retail space at Trump Plaza shows no sign of campaign activity, and a non-Trump company seems to sublease the garage from Trump Plaza LLC, leaving just the 2 brownstones. But they are not open to the public, making it difficult to see who the tenants are and whether they include the president's campaign. So, Forbes staked out the buildings, arriving at 7:15 a.m. one November morning and staying for the next 14 hours, with the exception of an 18-minute break around 3 p.m. 18 minutes, of course. What other length could there possibly be in the break? Okay. By our count, 7 people went in and out of the twin 4-story brownstones over the course of the day. 1 refused to talk, and 6 said they had not seen any sign of the campaign in the buildings, nor had a man behind the front desk at Trump Plaza. I've been here since the beginning, he said. If there was any kind of office rented out for a campaigning or whatever, I would know about it. Is the Trump campaign simply funneling money into the president's businesses and getting nothing in return? That seems unlikely. One, because, they're supposedly rational economic actors. But what if they're not? Ugh. One person who worked on the 2016 campaign said staffers sometimes crashed at Trump Plaza when they were in town. If that's the reason for the payments, it would be an unconventional arrangement. The campaign could, of course, pay for hotel rooms, although that would not guarantee a steady stream of rent for the president. From November 2017 to August 2018, the Trump campaign paid Trump Plaza LLC an average of $4,200 per month. The real estate website StreetEasy, and we didn't use Zillow on this, StreetEasy lists recent rentals in the building for $3,700 to $3,850 per month. Candidates are permitted to do business with their own companies only if they pay fair market prices. They're paying considerably more, it seems. There are other campaign payments that raise suspicions. 1 month after Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel to investigate Russian interference in the 2016 election, like paying for it, the campaign paid the Trump Corporation, another one of the president's companies, $90,000 in, quote, legal consulting expenses, according to federal records. It is not clear what legal services Trump's company provided the campaign or what rate it charged for the work. A spokesperson for the Trump organization did not respond to requests for comment. I wonder. Well, considering who their lawyers are and were at the time, I would have questions. So maybe, let's say the campaign paid Trump Corporation $90,000 in quote-unquote legal consulting to pay off the various porn stars and Playboy models. I don't really know. You don't really know. We may never know. We may never find out. Trump's 2020 campaign also spent about $120,000 at the President's Hotel in Washington, D.C., and the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas got $15,000 of campaign money in February of 2017. This is extremely unusual, said Anne Ravel, whose name came up again, and we still don't know how to pronounce, a Democrat who left her post as commissioner on the FEC shortly after Trump's inauguration. Again, she's being asked about different emoluments this time. There's always concern when you're looking at expenditures as to whether those expenditures are being used for personal use, for personal purposes, because that's illegal. And there is, in my opinion, a fine line with so much money being utilized for economic benefit of the candidate himself. Well, that should not surprise anyone. That's the way he likes to spend his money. But there you have it. If you've been donating your small dollars to power the MAGA train, you're a sucker, although you probably don't realize it because you're more than happy to put your money directly into Trump's pocket. It shows he's smart. Right? Okay. Let's see. Other things that we really have to bring to your attention. Let's update a little bit on North Carolina. There's still more about that we need to add. And I've got, let's see, a report, quick and dirty report from The Hill that will allow us to get this in before our next break. And then a little bit of the Washington Post reporting on it. Their headline says the most here. Over 1,000 absentee ballots. Remember, we're talking about those absentees in that weird county. And now we have 2 counties that apparently have irregularities with their absentee ballots in the North Carolina 9 race. Over 1,000 absentee ballots possibly destroyed in controversial, that's a good word for it, North Carolina House race, according to this report. Tal Axelrod with this report. Over 1,000 absentee ballots from likely Democratic voters may have been destroyed in the race for North Carolina's 9th congressional district last month as allegations of fraud on behalf of the Republican candidates mount. You're looking at several thousand, possibly 2,000, absentee ballot requests from this most recent election. About 40% of those, it appears at this point, may not have been returned. Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman told CNN. That's a third county. First there was the, Bladen County, and then there was another one that started with an R, if I recall correctly, and we'll see whether those counties are listed in any of these reports. Now, Wake County, that's a third one. The report comes after Representative Jerry Connolly, remember we brought up his name yesterday, the vice-ranking member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, called for an emergency hearing regarding allegations of, well, it says here voter fraud, but don't say that on Twitter. Everyone will yell at you, and they'll be right. It's elections fraud, not voter fraud. The voters haven't done anything wrong. You've tried to change the outcome of the election. In other words, I guess voter fraud is the label that the Republicans would like to hang on the mythical occurrence where they create fake voters or people vote more than once using various mechanisms. They almost never do this because it's practically impossible and also extraordinarily difficult to change the outcome of an election with these little drops in the bucket. It's just not worth doing. Elections fraud, on the other hand, is this sort of wholesale manipulation, for instance, in this case, of absentee ballots. Okay, so don't say voter fraud. Several voters have come forward since Election Day with claims that their uncompleted absentee ballots were illegally collected, and it remains unclear if their votes were counted. One woman on Monday claimed to have been paid by a Republican operative to collect ballots. We read about that. Republican Mark Harris holds a narrow lead of about 900 votes over Democrat Dan McCready, but North Carolina State Board of Elections has declined to certify the results of the election amid the allegations. McCready conceded to Harris and said he would not request a recount after being down approximately 700 votes in November. But yesterday's news also includes the report that the concession has been revoked. Not that it really matters and doesn't really have any serious legal implication, but it's out there. I'm wondering now whether McCready is going to show up at the House floor on January 3rd and say, I'm the member from North Carolina 9, and I should be seated. He won't have any certification, I don't think, unless they resolve this thing in his favor somehow between then and now. But I think he should show up and ask for, at the very least, that Harris not be seated. But I think he should just actually say, yeah, you should give me the seat. I've been pretty vocal about that yesterday and also on Twitter. They're trying very hard to make the conventional wisdom in this case that the only fair thing to do is to have a new election. I don't see how that's fair at all. I mean, you cheated, you forfeit. It's not a do-over, it's a forfeit. I think that's the way they should handle this thing. Of course, the Republicans are interested in a do-over. They're saying, well, next time we won't get caught cheating, so let's try that. We'll cheat, and if you get busted, just say, oh, I swear I won't do it again. I won't take any more steroids. Let's replay the game. It's not how it works. You lose. You forfeit. All right. Steny Hoyer, the incoming House Majority Leader, said Tuesday that Democrats won't seat Harris until the allegations are resolved. The allegation of serious fraudulent activity on behalf of the Republican administrator, one or more, dealing with primarily absentee ballots. So there's a very substantial question, Hoyer told reporters during a press briefing in the Capitol. If there is what appears to be a very substantial question on the integrity of the election, clearly we would oppose Mr. Harris as being seated until that is resolved. And it would be relatively easy to oppose his seating if he arrives with no credentials. And so far, no indication that he's going to get those credentials from the state, but Republicans are pushing for it. Speaking of the Republicans down in North Carolina, there's also this additional reporting here in the Washington Post by Amy Gardner and Beth Reinhard. Under this headline, Republican officials had early warnings of voting irregularities in North Carolina. In other words, they knew that this was going on. When GOP Representative Robert Pittenger lost his primary by a narrow margin in May, he suspected something was amiss. I shouldn't lose. What happened? The congressman turned to a group of friends and family who had gathered with him on election night at a steakhouse near Charlotte and blamed the ballot stuffers in Bladen, according to 3 people at the gathering. So Bladen is the first county where we heard of these shenanigans going on, and since then we have heard now of 2 more. Pittenger's concerns stemmed from the vote tallies in rural Bladen County, where his challenger, a pastor from the Charlotte suburbs named Mark Harris, had won 437 absentee mail-in votes. Pittenger, a 3-term incumbent, had received just 17. It does seem like a small number, doesn't it? In the days immediately after the race, aides to Pittenger told the executive director of the North Carolina Republican Party and a regional political director for the National Republican Congressional Committee that they believed fraud had occurred, according to people familiar with their discussions. GOP officials did little to scrutinize the results, instead turning their attention to Harris's general election campaign against a well-funded Democratic opponent, the people said. Their accounts provide the first indication that state and national Republican officials received early warnings about voting irregularities in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District, now the subject of multiple criminal probes. A spokesman for the NRCC denied that Pittenger's campaign raised the possibility of fraud in the primary. Allegations of fraud in November's general election have now put the outcome of the 9th Congressional District race in limbo. State investigators are examining the activities of a political operative named Leslie McCrae Dowless, who ran a, quote, get out the vote effort for the Harris campaign during the primary and general elections. While the investigation continues, the Elections Board has declined to certify the 9th District race in which Harris leads the Democrat McCready by 905 votes, according to unofficial results. On Thursday, McCready told television station WSOC that he was withdrawing his concession and accused Harris of bankrolling criminal activity. Dowless, who has worked on political campaigns in Bladen for at least a decade, touts his ability to mobilize voters to cast ballots by mail. According to people who know him, he has been under scrutiny by state officials since 2016, when allegations surfaced about illegal ballot harvesting in that year's campaigns, leading to a public hearing. Dowless, who told the Charlotte Observer that he did not commit any wrongdoing, declined to comment Thursday. I'm just not giving any comment this time, he told reporters and photographers in front of his Bladen Borough house, adding, no disrespect to anybody. The Harris campaign said it was not aware of any illegal activities. Pittenger said Dowless tried to sell him his services in 2016, but that he declined to hire the operative. I just knew I didn't want to be involved with him, Pittenger said. Dowless's efforts were widely known, and we did share our concerns with several people. He declined to elaborate on who he spoke to or what he said. But apparently no one else thinks that they heard about this, but it would implicate them if they admitted it, like Pittenger just did. Since reports of irregularities in the 9th District emerged last month, Republican leaders in the state, including Dallas Woodhouse, the state GOP executive director, initially played down concerns that laws were broken. They repeatedly cast the situation in political terms, asserting that any voting irregularities were not widespread enough to change the outcome of the election. In recent days, amid mounting allegations of a ballot harvesting operation, state Republicans have shifted their rhetoric. Woodhouse told the Post on Thursday that if the state elections board can show a substantial likelihood that possible fraud could have changed the outcome of November's vote, well, then we would fully support a new election. No, again, I would tell you, if the State Board of Elections can show a substantial likelihood that possible fraud changed the outcome of the election, then the election goes to the other guy. That's the way it should work. I would say go out there, and I think there are enough fraudulent and questionable ballots that cast votes for Harris out there that if you simply eliminated them from the count, it might flip the election results all by itself and leave it at that. Where they would run into trouble is if they don't have enough questionable ballots out there among the various counties. Well, I would take a look at all the ballots at this point, all the absentee ballots in every county in the district. And the easiest way to resolve it, I would guess, is if you can get to 906 mail-in votes for Harris that are suspect, I'd eliminate them and declare the other guy the winner. But that might not cover it. I guess that's one problem, because the other thing that they did was throw out Democratic ballots, and they have no way of knowing how many of the ballot requests that they fulfilled but which weren't returned were simply never cast by the voters who changed their minds about whether or not to vote. Though it seems like a strange thing to do, to go out of your way to request an absentee ballot and then just not bother to use it. Anyway, in an interview this week, Woodhouse initially said he did not recall fielding complaints from Pittenger aides of possible fraud after the primary, but he called back a few moments later to say he did remember hearing of anomalies and took a cursory look at the end of the race at the vote totals. And I guess he missed the 400-17 outcome in Bladen. He recalled concluding that Harris had won the overall vote with a strong showing from evangelical voters, but he said, "We did not look real specifically at absentee ballots. If somebody said something about the absentee ballots, it's just very possible that it didn't register with us," Woodhouse said. "We had a lot of campaigns and a lot of people expressing concerns at the end of the election, and we were trying to move quickly on to the general election." NRCC spokesman Matt Gorman denied anyone affiliated with the Pittenger campaign brought up the possible fraud to anyone at that committee, including Tyler Foote, who ran the Southeast region for the NRCC. "We had them on the phone numerous times. There was no mention of fraud," Gorman said. "It's unfortunate that there's a revisionist history going on." There might very well be. Foote didn't respond to multiple requests for comment. He's been named Harris's incoming chief of staff. So, yeah, he's not likely to look too hard at that, is he? Although whether Harris will be seated in Congress in January remains uncertain. Pittenger said he did not recall being told of fraud complaints his advisors made to Woodhouse and Foote, and he declined to confirm that he blamed ballot stuffers on election night, but he said there's a lot of angst among his campaign aides who were all upset about what happened. "I think there were a lot of frustrated feelings inside the room as we saw the results come in. The State Elections Board is investigating irregularities in mail-in balloting from the 9th District, many of them from Bladen County, which had the highest share of mail-in votes in the district," state records show. "Investigators have spoken with witnesses who link Dallas to an effort to collect absentee ballots from voters who are examining whether or not he and his associates filled out ballots or discarded them. According to people familiar with the probe, it's illegal to collect or tamper with someone else's ballot. Multiple voters said in interviews that they handed over their ballots, some of which were not fully filled out or were left unsealed, to people who showed up at their doors and offered to collect them." Right, and we know about that and how wrong it is. The Wake County District Attorney's Office in Raleigh and the State Bureau of Investigation are also conducting probes. Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman told the Post. So is Wake County not in the district, but is rather where the state capital is, and so therefore that's why they're investigating? Okay. Very interesting. I'm glad we could straighten that one out. All right. Anything else that we ought to glean from this article? Not really. Well, there's a little bit more scrolling all the way down. But I think we've pretty much covered that one and gotten everything that we can get out of that. We'll take our third break in just a second and see if we can't set up what's going to happen on the other side as it comes time to start the music in here. Let's see. Other things that require coverage in our last segment. Okay, well, we got this and we got that and we got the other thing. We'll be right back. I think we're done with North Carolina for the moment, except for we could give a little bit of information, and why don't we do that? On the other side, a little bit of information about procedure on day one, January 3rd, and how they might get this whole thing straightened out. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. I almost forgot the name of my own show on the way back, and I guess I'm getting tired. It's Friday. All right, let's see. Still unclear on exactly which direction we need to go, but I guess we'll end the North Carolina piece by bringing up 2 or 3 things that I happened to pick up along the way on Twitter. In our discussions of these things. The first, with regards to procedure, I noticed a tweet. I don't remember who was retweeting it into my stream here, but because I don't follow Rich Galen, believe me. But he does have this to add with respect to the North Carolina thing, or he's tweeting or retweeting Chad Pergram, who I don't know, I actually don't follow, but who follows us. Chad Pergram covers Congress for Fox News, and so he's following me, but me not following him, me not following rules of English either. But Chad Pergram had tweeted, Pelosi on the outstanding North Carolina House race. If the House were to seat a prospective declared winner, or if they will, I guess, seat Harris, the House still retains the rights to decide who is seated. Any member elect can object to the seating, and then we see how that goes. So a little bit more on that. And actually, by the way, this gives us the opportunity to take a look back at something I saw tweeted this morning and I felt compelled to correct. The Huffington Post tweeting out this story, and with this tweet, the story reporting on what Pelosi had to say there, along with this comment, well, this could get awkward. Any new member of Congress can deny the swearing in of Republican Mark Harris, the winner, supposedly, in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District, who appears to have benefited from election fraud. Their article accompanying that tweet, Nancy Pelosi on North Carolina election fraud, we can refuse to seat that congressman, which he isn't. So I guess that would make it simple to do. Any newly elected House member can object to the swearing in of Republican Mark Harris amid this election scandal by Jennifer Bendry. So I think we all know Jennifer, but I want to step in and correct this thing, and I don't want to mansplain this thing to you. It doesn't have anything to do with your being a woman, but I guess I'll just throw that out there. But if that is, if maybe it's unconscious that I'm doing it, then Joan McCarter says, how about that? We'll blame it on Joan. Joan will be the one to correct you. Should I read the article? It's a short one, and then we'll clarify it, or maybe we'll clarify it beforehand. Pelosi likely said, well, here's the quote. Let's see if we can find it. She sets up the story. Everything's correct. about what we've read so far in terms of how this thing happened. And then we've got this. Okay, so North Carolina State Board of Elections is planning to hold a public hearing by December 21st to decide how to proceed. It can either certify the election, call for a new election between the same candidates, which they shouldn't do, or throw the whole thing out and start all over again. They also shouldn't do that. The North Carolina Republican Party's executive director told CNN, he was all upset, right? Yeah, yesterday, one of the quotes that didn't make it into the story before from Dallas Woodhouse, originally when he was having to play like shocked and surprised. He said, the situation has shaken us to the core, and he's been so upset that he actually threw up. I think he said, I vomited. I was so upset from all this. And then after that, he came back out and said, yeah, but we should get another shot at the election. And nobody, I don't know, people said they told us, but they didn't tell us. And maybe he was vomiting because he realized he had been told that and didn't do anything. Anyway, Pelosi noted that Republicans in the state are also upset about the race because of how fraud may have affected their primary election. Worst comes to worst, she said, and that's not a quote. That's just, I guess, Jennifer Bendry's. I don't. Worst comes to worst. Is that, what is the expression? I don't think that's it. Anyway, the House Administration Committee has full investigative authority. I'm glad we got that one right. House Administration Committee. Full investigative authority to determine the winner of the race and could take that extraordinary step if North Carolina officials can't get to the bottom of what happened. This is bigger than that one seat. It's about undermining the integrity of elections, Pelosi said. What was done there was so remarkable in that person, those entities got away with that. Now, where's the quote? I guess it's here underneath the picture of Pelosi. The House still retains the right to decide who is seated, referring to the possibility that members of Congress could refuse to swear in the Republican of North Carolina's 9th district, etc., blah, blah. All right, so I guess the quote that was attributed to her, still not 100% clear in here. Maybe it's in the video. But what we need to clarify is, no, it's not that any newly elected House member can object to the swearing in of Republican Mark Harris amid his election scandal. That is true. But it's bigger than that. Any member of the House can object to the swearing. Here's the thing. I don't know how Pelosi put it, but it sounds like maybe she put it in a way that wasn't entirely clear. Any member-elect, I think was the language we were looking at, can object. That's from the tweet, right? Any new member of Congress is, that's how they ended up saying it. Now we have to look back a little bit more. Was it Rich Galen and Chad Pergram's quote? Maybe that was it. Oh, yes. Any member-elect can object to the seating. So I think that was interpreted by Jennifer Bendry, I think, to mean, people who are newly elected to the House, like people who are in their first year of service or would be, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for instance, could make that objection. Yes, she could. She absolutely could. I don't know whether she cares to be the one to do it. Thing to remember is at that point on January 3rd, before they're all sworn in, the House resolves itself entirely in each new election. They are all members-elect at that point. On January 3rd, or whenever Congress adjourns sine die from the 115th Congress, they all essentially technically lose their seats or vacate their seats. Some of them come right back. Others are replaced by new people. But all of them are members-elect when they arrive in the chamber first thing on January 3rd. Some of them this is their 50th time as member-elect, but they're all members-elect. So it's not the case that only new members, like members of this Mark Harris guy's class of new members, would be able to object. Anybody could. Now that that's clear, so nobody's off the hook. Like you can't say, well, Steny Hoyer can't do it because it has to be a member-elect, and we'll lobby the new members to do it and pick our favorite one. You could do that, and they have the right to do that. They just might not know the magic words. Rich Galen, who, by the way, is a former spokesperson for both Dan Quayle and Newt Gingrich, in case you're wondering where he's coming from. But he puts out there, as I remember, from the Indiana 8 battle. Everyone remember the Bloody 8th? We've mentioned it on the show before. From the Indiana 8th Congressional District, from that battle in 1982, the motion to prevent someone from taking the oath, that's what we're doing here, is I move that the gentleman stand aside. That's the sort of the magic words. They don't have to be exactly those words, but that's the form in which it's traditionally done. What's essentially happening here is the members are administered the oath of office en masse, swearing them in as members of Congress. And I can't remember offhand, and again, this is why I recommend that you watch on any January 3rd, whether or not there's controversy. I can't recall whether the deal is, I think maybe members-elect come in and there's a roll call and they all answer the roll, the clerk reading the names, and they register their presence. That's also for the purpose of establishing a quorum. And then they may, at that point, as members-elect, hold the election for Speaker of the House. So it may actually be, it doesn't make a great deal of sense, but then you have to make a choice which is going to make least sense. In other words, shouldn't they be fully sworn in members of the House before they vote on who's going to become the Speaker of the House? Yes, they should. But at the same time, you also have this question: who should swear in the new member? Should it be the clerk of the House? Or is it normally the clerk of the House? Or is it the Speaker of the House, newly elected? And I can't remember how it goes, and I'm not sure which one makes more sense. But we're just going to have to watch on January 3rd to refresh our memory. And if you've seen it and you remember, give me a shout. And it seems like process would demand, like I would say that the more important thing here would be, I would have the clerk swear in new members and then have sworn seated members vote on the Speaker. But for whatever reason, it seems to me like I remember the Speaker administering the oath to everybody, and she wouldn't really be able to do that unless she was already the Speaker, or there would be no point anyway. Even though everybody knows she's about to be elected. Okay, so I can't remember which way they do it. However, Rich has it right that the words used is basically when they are saying everybody stand for the oath, raise your right hand. At some point, somebody would say, Madam Speaker, and I think that's the way it would go as opposed to Madam Clerk, but who knows. I move that the gentleman, Mark Harris of North Carolina, stand aside. That is, in other words, that he not take the oath of office, and not be permitted to take the oath of office. It's a motion. It would perhaps be subject to debate and then a vote, unless by voice vote, I guess the presiding officer, whoever it may be, were to decide that the ayes on the motion to have the gentleman stand aside had prevailed. So I think that was sort of important. We might as well straighten out what the magic words are and how it works. Another question would be, what can they do after they have Mr. Harris stand aside? On the other hand, I guess it's also possible, particularly if there's no certification sent from the state, that both Harris and McCready could appear on the House floor and both claim to be the representative of North Carolina's 9th District, in which case there would perhaps be a motion that McCready also be asked to stand aside. And at that point, without the new House having had any opportunity to actually examine the fact pattern, they might ask that they both, in fact, stand aside. There's also some question about, like, how do you get on the floor? Like, if you don't have a certificate of election, how do you get there? And I'm not really certain how that works either, except I do know that in the past, and particularly in that Indiana case, the Indiana 8th District, in that case, I believe both claimants to the seat were given access to the House floor, and maybe both spoke in favor of their case. And and in that case, it's my recollection that the last time around on the Indiana 8th, and it's called the Bloody 8th because it had always been really close elections, and there were a lot of there was a lot of controversy over close ones where there were allegations of wrongdoing one side or the other. So in that one, the Republican, I think, was the one certified by the state. But in the end, they ended up seating the Democrat in that one because it was a Democratic majority. And although they didn't say that was why they were doing it, they said that they had found evidence that substantiated the claim of the Democrat and against the claim of the Republican. But the Republicans really thought that they had legitimately won that one. And I think what they did was they kept the seat vacant for several months while the House Administration Committee investigated what to do. And eventually they came back with the recommendation that the Democrat ought to be seated for whatever reason. And they went ahead and just did that. And, it was a party line vote. The Republicans were furious. They had a walkout. They used all sorts of stalling tactics to try to bring the business of the House to a crawl. And it was relatively successful when they did it. But they just went ahead and seated the Democrat. They could have done that on the first day, but they wanted to look like they were giving it some due consideration. And I would imagine that they want to do the same thing here. Though, again, they could simply conclude, no, the Democrat is the legitimate winner for whatever reason. If they can come up with something that they feel makes sense and stands to reason, they can go ahead and do that. But would they do that on January 3rd and simply say, nope, you forfeit and the Democrat is in? Probably not, though they could. I got a hold of another tweet, and I think this one actually came directly to me here from Sean Pierce, who tweets as Silversmith, with a little underscore before the name Silversmith, in case you're trying to find him. And Sean has this in response to one of my tweets about, no, look, the conventional wisdom that the Republicans want here is that the only fair thing is to have a do-over, but I say just seat the other person. Republicans, he says, they obviously don't remember Stinson versus Marx. And I'm not certain I could say to you that I remember Stinson versus Marx offhand either. But he sends along an archived 1994 article from the New York Times, Vote Fraud Ruling Shifts Pennsylvania Senate. And let me see, is this the text here? Let's say, saying Philadelphia's election system had collapsed under, quote, a massive scheme, unquote, by Democrats to steal a state Senate election in November. A federal judge today, and this is a federal judge, not the House, but the House has at least as much power to decide these things with regard to the House as a federal judge would with regard to the state Senate in Pennsylvania. A federal judge today took the rare step of invalidating the vote and ordered the seat filled by the Republican candidate. So when a Republican benefits from it, I guess there's case law that says, yeah, sure, you can just select the other person. It's a forfeit. But now we're going to pretend that doesn't exist. And I'm not saying that that's absolutely going to happen, but if and when it comes around to it, Democrats will probably take the more cautious approach. But in case anybody hints at the possibility of simply deciding to seat McRae, you can bet that Republicans will be out there screaming that this is unprecedented, and it isn't. In making such a sweeping move, the article continues, the judge, Clarence C. Newcomer of Federal District Court here, did for the Republicans what the election had not. Enable them to regain control of the state Senate, which they lost 2 years ago. So that's pretty consequential for a judge to step in there on that. Normally the judges shy away from stuff like that. Supreme Court, something. Think about that, everybody. Judge Newcomer, unless he's Newcomer, it's spelled like newcomer, though, ruled that the Democratic campaign of William G. Stinson had stolen the election from Bruce S. Marks in North Philadelphia's 2nd Senatorial District through an elaborate fraud in which hundreds of residents were encouraged to vote by absentee ballot, even though they had no legal reason, like a physical disability or a scheduled trip outside the city, to do so. In many instances, according to Republicans who testified during a 4-day civil trial last week, Democratic campaign workers forged absentee ballots. On many of the ballots, they used the names of people who were living in Puerto Rico, or serving time in prison, and in one case, the voter who had been dead for some time. Substantial evidence was presented establishing massive absentee ballot fraud, deception, intimidation, harassment, and forgery, Judge Newcomer wrote in a decision made public today. Of course, that was 1994. The district, which includes white, black, and Hispanic neighborhoods, imagine that, all in the same district, gee whiz, of course, is overwhelmingly Democratic by registration. Nonetheless, campaign workers testified that widespread voter apathy had prompted them to promote, quote, a new way to vote to ensure a victory. Door-to-door for votes. Well, I guess maybe door-to-door for votes isn't the name of the program, but I think the next section, the way this thing formats. In addition to specific instances of wrongdoing, the state Republican Party, which filed the suit, contended that the door-to-door solicitation of votes by Democrats was not permissible under the state election code, which says the Philadelphia County Board of Elections, quote, shall deliver or mail, unquote, the ballots to a voter. The city, whose lawyers represented the Board of Elections, contended that the statute was open to broad interpretation, but throughout the hearing, Judge Newcomer made it clear that he did not agree. Indeed, the two Democrats on the three-member Board of Elections, an elected body, testified that they were aware of the voter fraud, had intentionally failed to enforce the election law, my, oh my, and had later tried to conceal their activities by hurriedly certifying the Democratic candidate as the winner. It feels like a mirror image of what's happening now. Judge Newcomer ordered that Mr. Stinson, a 49-year-old former assistant deputy mayor of Philadelphia, be removed from his state senate office, and that Mr. Marks, a 36-year-old lawyer and former aide to United States Senator Arlen Specter, who just a few years later wouldn't be a Republican anymore, be certified the winner within 72 hours. This is extraordinary relief, Judge Newcomer wrote. However, it is appropriate because extraordinary conduct by the Stinson campaign and the board tainted the entirety of the absentee ballots. The entirety, wow. So I'm curious about the mechanics. Did he throw out all absentee votes? And was the election close enough that Marks had an actual claim to have won but for the absentee fraud? Or did he just say it's a forfeit? The two parties agreed that Mr. Marks would not try to enforce the order and take his seat until the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit here reviewed an appeal that Mr. Stinson said he planned to file on Tuesday. At stake is the result of a special election held last November to fill the seat made vacant by the death of a Democratic senator. The election was crucial because the party that won the seat would also win control of the 50-member state Senate. The judge decided to hear the case after state election officials and state courts rejected the Republicans' claims. The Republicans have an appeal pending before the state's highest court. They went to federal court on the ground that there were violations in the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act. How nice that they felt they could take refuge in the Voting Rights Act and in civil rights. Well, again, it was 1994. The Democrats, fearing that the court would rule against them, suddenly adjourned the state Senate on Monday, 2 full days ahead of schedule. But when the Senate reconvenes next month, barring any successful Democratic appeal, Republicans will control the state Senate by outnumbering Democrats 26-24. Republican leaders minimized the effect of that ruling, saying they were eager to work with Governor Robert Casey, a Democrat, on reforming the state's health care and welfare systems. Gee whiz. Ralph Teti, T-E-T-I, a lawyer for Mr. Stinson, said in an interview, "We believe, as we have said from day one, that a federal court has absolutely no jurisdiction in a purely state law proceeding, when there are appeals pending in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court." That's a good point. Mr. Teti noted that 5 or 6 state judges had already reviewed Mr. Marks's case and that they had all dismissed it on procedural grounds. It's a procedural crime, without considering the merits. The dispute has also captured the attention of the National Republican Party, which asserted that the accusations of voter fraud, and it's not, were particularly egregious. Oh, wait, in some cases they are, though. Like putting the names of other people on those ballots. That's true. But some election experts noted today that there have been many cases, larger cases of voter fraud in Chicago and Louisiana. Chicago in the 1970s and Alabama in the 1980s. The case involving the Philadelphia seat, however, may be the largest example of involving fraudulent absentee ballots. Mr. Marks, here's some answers here, won 564 more votes at the voting booths than his Democratic opponent. But Mr. Stinson won the election by 461 votes after he obtained 80% of the 1,757 absentee ballots cast. Boy, that's remarkably close to the same result in the current situation. Legal experts said that Judge Newcomer's decision was highly unusual because he threw out all of the absentee ballots, all 1,757. The judge wrote in his ruling, "The will of the electorate is reflected in the votes cast on the voting machines." In justifying his decision to throw out all the absentee ballots, he cited a similar situation in Alabama. In that case, the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit in Atlanta ruled in 1986 that there was no need to be mathematically precise when a candidate has engaged in, quote, massive violations of election law. The abuse of absentee ballot applications and the ballots themselves, which are typically written in English, has apparently become more widespread with the increasing number of Hispanic voters in the inner cities, according to Arlene C. Rubin, executive director of Project LEAP, which stands for Legal Elections in All Precincts, a Chicago-based organization that monitors elections. Vote fraud is moving out of the polling places and into people's living rooms, Ms. Rubin said. In the meantime, 2 criminal investigations are being conducted, one by the State Attorney General Ernest D. Preet, Jr., and the other by the Justice Department. Wonder how they came out. Very interesting look back at the history, presumably analogous to what's going on here. I wonder if they threw out all the absentee ballots throughout the 9th District, what is the outcome? If they throw out all the absentee ballots in Bladen County, what is the outcome? One wonders. I'm not certain that it comes out exactly the same way, but it's an interesting question, and I guess something that the House Administration Committee can take a look at, and I guess officials down there in North Carolina can take a look at as well. All right. While we have been on the air, I guess worth noting just before we take off for the day that Donald Trump, I don't know whether he tweeted it or what, but has made official his pick of Fox News. What was she, a Fox and Friends host? Heather Nauert. She's been working as State Department spokesperson for the last year or so. Now to be the next United Nations ambassador, pending, of course, review by the Senate, and William Barr as the next Attorney General, because he finally went ahead and made a nomination, and then we can all ignore the fact that there's still no paperwork on Whitaker, and I guess probably never will be. So, all right, we'll just make sure we're caught up with that information, and you can take that with you into the weekend. Time now to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The other story we didn't get to that lots of people are talking about today, but you should absolutely read over the weekend, the big story in the New York Times about one of the housekeepers in Trump's, is it the New Jersey golf club? Yeah, the Bedminster place, Victorina, not Victoria, Victorina Morales, very bravely coming forward to let everybody know she is an undocumented immigrant who just happens to basically be making Donald Trump's bed and cleaning his toilet and dusting off his crystal golf trophies at his residence in Bedminster. I did see others who had read the article noting that the golf club operates a shuttle bus back and forth to pick up her and a couple of other employees who they, I guess, know cannot get a driver's license legally because they're undocumented immigrants. They, of course, must know that they don't have their papers. They're employing them. So massive hypocrisy, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I'm old enough to remember when Democrats had to resign from office or withdraw their nominations to high office when it was found out that they were employing undocumented immigrants in their households. But I guess, don't hold your breath or anything stupid like that, waiting for Donald Trump to get around to that stuff. Lots of other stories we didn't get to, of course, but that's what next week will be for. By then, they'll all have been left in the dust, but I think we spent our time decently. There is another item floating out there that I think probably would have made an interesting addition to today's reading, but maybe we can read it over the weekend and perhaps discuss it next week. This is an interesting thought. Ian Millhiser had put out in Think Progress. I'll just give you the headline here. The key to saving us from Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. lies in an obscure law signed by George H.W. Bush. How do you like that? Basically, it's a procedure. George H.W. Bush didn't have to sign this law in order to create the power, but I think they enhanced the power. But reminding us that Congress, at least technically, retains the power to overrule every once in a while the Supreme Court. Of course, they can pass new legislation that invalidates their ruling if it wasn't a constitutional finding. But this is sort of, I guess, I'll have to read it over the weekend to be sure, something akin to the Congressional Review Act that Republicans used to great effect in invalidating Obama regulation that we might be able to use against Supreme Court rulings. However, of course, it would help an awful lot if we had the Senate on our side in all of this. So it may be moot in the end, as many things often are. But do stay tuned for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam coming up next. Stock market collapse again to catch up with, and he'll be doing that. And noticing that Fox Business News appears to have ignored it.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, excuse me, I guess they've got it wrong. The Fox Business Network blasted the Trump administration for getting their massive tax cuts passed but not delivering the economic growth that they promised. Much more to come, of course, and unfortunately I left myself short on time to tell you about all those fantastic things. The only thing you can do about it then is tune in and hear what he has to say next.